This is a 2002 Baja 29 Outlaw. It's a twin engine boat, and what we're going to be doing is we'll be doing a complete engine winterization of both engines, and what that's going to consist of is draining of both blocks and cooling systems, of any and all water, and we will be refilling it with RV antifreeze, as well as doing an oil and filter change on both engines. Okay, so what we're going to do now before we start these engines for the first time, we're going to add this fuel stabilizer to the boat's gas tank, which we've estimated it has roughly about 17.5 gallons of fuel in it currently. So 1 ounce of this treatment treats 10 gallons. So what we're going to do is we're going to put about 1 3/4 ounces of this fuel treatment into the boat's gas tank. So this is what we're going to do. We put 1 ounce in there now, and we're going to go just about to 3/4 there, and now we're going to run the engine. Now that we've ran both engines on the garden hose to let the engines warm up and let that fuel stabilizer kind of work its way through the engine's fuel systems, we're going to proceed to drain the gear lube. And on this particular Bravo model drive, the drain screw is located behind the prop, so we're going to remove the prop. And the first step is you're going to take a screwdriver and fold up all the tabs that are locking it into place. Now, using a block of wood to hold the prop in between the calibration plate to keep it from moving, you'll take an inch and 3/16 socket, and you'll begin to loosen the nut. With the nut loose, remove it along with the retaining ring, and then pull straight out on the prop. Set to the side and take note of the thrust washer. Special note on these thrust washers: the back side's tapered. The taper side always goes down, so just make sure not to get that mixed up when you go to put it back on. And now we'll proceed the same procedure to remove the starboard side prop. On these twin engine applications, just another note, one drive is standard rotation, other drive is counter rotation, so the props are different. You can see now with both props removed, the drain screw is now located and easily accessible. See it there on both drives. Now we're going to proceed in draining the gear lube using an impact driver with a flathead tip. Take a hammer and just break it loose. Take the screw completely out and be cautious of the gasket. Now that we have the bottom screw removed, we're going to remove the vent plug here at the top of the drive using the same bit driver. I just leave it lightly loose inside. Now we'll proceed to drain the gear lube on the port drive. Since we have twin 496 mags, I broke out the service manual for the 496 8.1 liter engines. And we're going to go over the draining of the seawater system. We're going to use the boat out of water procedure. We've got the boat placed on a level surface. Next, we're going to remove the air pump from the engine, which is mounted right on the heat exchanger. So we're going to take the blue pump out. Ensure that the lever on the top of the pump is flush with the handle, which it is. We're going to install the air pump on the actuator fitting, which is going to be this A here, which is all going to be located right here on the engine. So we're going to secure that to the fitting and then pull lever up vertical to lock the pump onto the fitting, like so. Now we're going to pump air into the system until both green indicators extend from the water drains on both sides of the engine. The port side is going to start draining first before the starboard side. So now we're going to begin to pump. There's one indicator, there's the other indicator. Now that I've shown you that the water is draining out of the system, we're going to allow the system to drain for a minimum of 5 minutes and pump air as necessary to keep the green indicators extended, which as you can see here, they're both still fully extended. So now we're going to pull the lanyard stop switch if it's equipped, and we're going to crank the engine over slightly to purge any water trapped in the seawater pump, but we're not going to allow the engine to start. And once that's done, we're going to remove the air pump, secure it back to its location, and we're going to leave the green indicators purged while we're doing the remainder of our work, just to ensure that all the water is drained out of the system. Okay, so now we're at the helm of the boat, and we're going to pull the lanyard per the service manual, and this key is for the starboard engine. So we're going to turn it on and we're going to crank it over just for a couple of seconds and allow the water to get out of the seawater pump. Okay, now that we've cranked the engine, Mercruiser recommends leaving the drain system open while transporting the boat or while performing other maintenance. This helps ensure that all the water is drained. So we moved over to the port side. We're going to remove the pump off the heat exchanger. Now with the lanyard still removed from the previous engine, we're going to use the port key to crank over the port engine to allow the water to escape the seawater pump. Now we're going to remove the pump, leave both green indicators fully exposed on both engines. As you can see here, they're both still fully exposed. Put the pump back on the heat exchanger, and now we'll begin to change the oil and filter on both engines. Now we're going to begin to drain the oil. We will be using an engine oil drain pump. So instead of using the easy drain oil system, being this is a twin engine, that hose does not run through the bilge plug. So we're going to be removing the dipstick, installing the pump on the dipstick tube, and pumping the oil out into a suitable container. Okay, so our first steps, we're going to loosen the oil filter to vent the system, which you can see by me turning it. It's loose. So now we're going to remove the dipstick, which is located right here. Going to wipe any excess oil off. We're also going to check and make sure what level it's at, which it's full. So we're going to wipe the excess oil off and set aside. And now we're going to take our oil pump and hook it up to the dipstick tube. Now we're going to remove the old oil filter and set into a canister. I've placed some rags just to keep the mess minimal. Okay, we're going to take just a little bit of this oil and we're just going to lightly lubricate the O-ring of the new filter to make it easier whenever we go to change it the next time around. And spin the filter on. Okay, while we have the port engine oil draining, oil filter's already been removed. We're going to go ahead and fill the starboard engine back up with oil since it's already been drained. The oil filter's already been installed. I just want to make a special note here of the oils that's recommended. We're not going to be using Mercruiser Quicksilver oil. We're going to be using another brand that is NMMA F-C rated. It is a Sierra brand of oil, but it is NMMA FCW certified oil, so we're not obstructing anything. You know, it replaces Mercruiser oil. It's the SAE 2540 synthetic blended oil, so we are abiding by the service manual by Mercruiser with this brand of oil. This engine will hold approximately 9 quarts of oil, but you always want to make sure that you use the engine's dipstick to verify when the engine is full. Since this is 5 quarts of oil, we're going to go ahead and dump the whole thing in, and then we'll use the dipstick to see where we're at. Now that we put 5 quarts of oil in it, we're going to go ahead and start checking with the dipstick to see what the fluid level is. Keep in mind, we just sucked out 9 quarts of dirty oil through this dipstick, so it's not uncommon to see residual oil on the dipstick. As you can see, we are registering on the dipstick, but we're not even to the add mark yet. So we're going to add a couple of quarts and recheck. Okay, I've added 2 more quarts of oil, so we're going to Okay, I've added another 2 quarts, so we're now at a total of 9 quarts of oil added to the engine. We're going to recheck again. And we were right at the OK mark. So this engine's full of oil. What we'll do is we'll put gear lube into the drive and fill up the gear lube monitor bottle. And then we will run the engine on propylene glycol, and then we will again recheck our fluid level, because once we filled the oil filter up, it will have dropped a little bit, so we will have to add some more oil after we run the engine. Okay, now using the proper fitting and the proper gear lube, which we're using the Quicksilver high performance gear lube, which is an SAE 90 weight. We're going to fill this drive. And now we'll begin pumping gear lube until we get it out of the top screw of the drive. Alright, now that the drive's filled and the plug's in with a new gasket, we'll take the same nut driver we took it off with and make sure that it's seated properly. Special note to take away on this gear lube change: after we got fluid coming out of the top orifice, we put the plug back in it, tighten it up, and then give it a few more pumps to purge the air out of the gear lube monitor bottle. And once you get a little bit of fluid coming up through the bottom, you're generally safe. That gets all the air out of the system. If you don't do that, likely the first time you use the boat next season, that air pocket will work its way out, and it could potentially cause the gear lube monitor to drop low enough in level to send a buzzer. So we try to purge all that air out by pushing fluid up to the bottle. Okay, now that we've ran both engines on propylene glycol, that just ensures us that we've got a full system full of antifreeze to protect it over the freeze period of the wintertime. So now we're going to come back and recheck our oil levels. And on the starboard engine, we are in the OK range after running the engine, so there will be no need to add oil to this engine. So we'll reinsert the dipstick, move over to the port engine. On this port engine, we are also in the OK range. I always like to wipe it off and just double check myself. You kind of got to use both sides of the dipstick, but we are right in the middle of the OK range. So there will be no need to add oil to either engine. Now that our engines have been fully winterized, all our fluids have been checked, gear lube monitor bottles are full. As you can see here, after changing the gear lube, we've installed 2 new oil filters, which we've put the date on them. Now we're going to tag the engine belts with this pink marking tape. That's also, labeled Winterize, the date we did it, and in this particular case, the technician who Another thing we like to do here, we'll take both sets of keys out of the ignition, and we will zip tie them to the steering wheel. Okay, now we're going to reinstall our prop shaft, and we're going to install our thrust washer first, taper side down, and then we're going to use some 2,4-C. Now we'll install the propeller, aligning the splines. Insert your retaining ring, throw it on the nut, using your block of wood, secure propeller, reinstall prop nut, making sure that you get your tabs aligned. And our final step here in the winterization process, we're going to turn the battery switches off. Each engine has its own battery, so we will turn them off, which is located there at the top. And the reason we do that is to try to keep any drain or anything that would cause the batteries to run down over the winter. We like to turn them off. You can disconnect them, you can remove the batteries from the boat. The best thing to do, if you don't want to replace your batteries every couple of years, is to completely remove them from the boat and place them on a trickle charger, just to keep them nice, charged up and fresh over the winter time period.